Good evening, Ipswich. I'd like to call the Thursday, January 20th school committee meeting to order at 7:17. And our high school representative is interviewing at colleges today.
Oh, let's go. Good for her.
I actually have a report to read in a little while, but I'll read the mission statement if that's okay. Ipswich Public School aspires to empower all students to be global citizens who are effective communicators, analytical problem solvers, and savvy consumers of information. We propose to do this through an emphasis on communication, critical thinking, creativity, self-management, perseverance, and collaborations. Students will be active partners in authentic learning, offering voice and choice in demonstrating competency. Announcements. Dr. Blake? Oh, no, that's me. I don't have the sheet this time, sorry. The next school committee meeting will be held on Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022. The fiscal year 23 budget will be presented for the first time at this meeting. There is an additional meeting scheduled for Thursday, February 3rd at 7 p.m. should it be necessary. Special acknowledgements. Dr. Blake?
Well, we're going to be celebrating special acknowledgements in just a moment, so I'm going to leave it to Tom Gallagher when the time comes.
Okay. Citizens' comments. Are there any citizens' comments other than for the athletic awards today? Okay. We're going to forego the high school representative report, which I'll read right after fall sports awards. So let's go to the fall sports awards presentation. I'm going to turn the floor over to Tom Gallagher, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you to everyone for having us here tonight. It seems like it's been a long time since we've been able to do this in person, and as I just told people in the hallway, it would be really nice if we could do this traditional and take off masks and so forth, but to keep everybody safe, we're going to break this into two parts, actually three parts. I have a little intro piece here that I'm going to do, and then right now we've got our cheerleading, field hockey, football, and golf teams in here, and we're going to recognize them, and then we're going to bring boys soccer, girls soccer, and volleyball in as a second wave, so that way we can kind of move things along. So I guess at this point, to kind of look back at the fall season, it was a really amazing run. We had lots of teams that had lots of individual and collective successes. It was really nice from our perspective to see what looked fairly normal for a change. You know, fall 2020, when we were out there, we had masks on and we were sanitizing soccer balls and we were limiting fans and so forth. So it was really nice to see people get out on the field on the courts and so forth and compete. Even though in volleyball we still had to do some restrictions with masks and so forth, it was probably the closest thing to normal that we've seen in a couple of years. So that was really nice. And fingers crossed that we can get through this winter. Hopefully as we evolve, maybe this spring it will look even more normal. So before we get into the All-Stars, just a couple of acknowledgements and notable accomplishments and so forth. So we had a Baker Division Co-Defensive Player of the Year, Henry Wright, on the football team. We have Baker Division Coach of the Year for boys cross country with Sue Marcos. Baker Division Champions, we had 3 teams this fall. We had boys cross country, field hockey, and volleyball. We had 2 Division 4 Final Four teams with our field hockey and our volleyball teams. We had an MIAA Division 4 State Championship team with our volleyball team. We also had 2 Sportsmanship Award winners for the Baker Division. We had the boys cross country team and the football team. And we had a Cheerleading Spirit Award winner for Elia Capobianco. So congratulations to those teams and individuals for those accomplishments. So traditionally for our student athletes, we would have them come up and we'd have a few people up here and we'd shake hands and hand out certificates. Tonight we're going to do that a little bit differently. We've got certificates on the table over here, so if you're present when I call your name, you can come up and grab your certificates off the table. They start on the left-hand side over there and they work their way towards me. Okay? So your team's in alphabetical order here? Yep.
Quick question. We generally for the papers get a picture. How do you want to do that?
I'm sorry.
A photograph for the newspaper. How do you want to do that?
However, we can step into the hallway where there's more space. And
We can do it that way.
Afterwards, outside the theater.
Sure. We'll do that in two different groups then, this group and the next group.
Yep. we can do
Okay.
that.
Fine. So stand by in the hall and we'll do that quickly on the way up. Please.
Great, thank you. So starting with our cheerleading squad, we have All-Star Katie Coffey. Field hockey, first team All-Star Chloe Pizzetti. Field hockey, first team All-Star Linda Rutenberg. First team field hockey All-Star Ella Vogler. Field hockey second team All-Star Morgan Bodwell. Second team field hockey All-Star Julia Mosley. Football team, we have first team All-Star David Lornigan. Football first team All-Star Henry Wright. And from our golf team, we have second team All-Star Charlie Jepson. And also golf team second team All-Star Evan Stein. And that is our first four teams.
Fabulous.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, everybody. I had the great pleasure of watching every field hockey game. A phenomenal experience. I'm so happy for you girls. It was just such a great game. And Ella, I understand you're going home in a couple of days. Thank you for gracing us with your presence.
Congratulations.
Are we going to do the picture first or wait?
Maybe get the others to come in and to get a
Yeah, let's the other.
Do them all together.
We'll do the picture quick.
What's starting?
You want to
Chamber,
do two separate pictures too?
have two groups for chamber, so one's coming in at 7:30.
So many kids.
Yeah, I guess they want to do two separate photos. So.
It's nice to see that you do these sports events again.
Second group, go ahead.
We love it. So if they get a letter the first time, they get a letter like the I on their jacket, and after that they just get pins for each sport.
When did they get their letter like that?
First letter.
Oh, God.
So she embarrasses me. It's a squad.
I think the racing thing sounds cool.
because they're all seniors. This has been circulating. There's Claire, there's your cousin Andy. All these kids are basically the high school senior class. Isn't that ridiculous? It's so...
Did you notice that although we didn't approve any grade 5 choice, we have 2 grade 5 choice students, and we didn't vote to approve any.
It's just that they're doing yearbook stuff, so
Yeah, that's
that was
interesting.
circulating
Yeah, I just
around the
kinda
other
like,
day.
oh, that happened.
Putting in the yearbook.
I mean, we also
It's funny
voted
how
to
you-
approve
Yeah.
these another
And then
game, so
you know,
yeah.
13
I'm
years
just like,
or 14 years pass. And
Kind of odd. What are we putting in for 6 next year? 6 is 8. 6, 7, 8, I think it was 8 per class.
Let's see what they asked for.
So
Not
that's
many
2,
at all.
so 2 of them are already taken, supposedly if those kids would stay.
Yeah.
She's so all over it. It's amazing.
They're not asking for any at the high school?
No, 25.
Oh, 25 total,
Yeah.
okay, sorry, I'm like, what?
Yeah, I saw that too.
Not specific to a particular grade, that's really odd.
All right, round 2. So as I told the other group, it really would have been nice to be able to do this a little bit more traditionally and line people up and shake hands and take masks off and so forth, but unfortunately, we're not able to do that tonight. So what we've done is your certificates are printed, they're over here. When I call your name, you can come up and grab your certificate, and then afterwards, we're going to go up by the gym and take a second photo, okay? So we've got teams in alphabetical order, so we just finished the call. We're going to move on to boys soccer. So we have first team all-star Ephraim Johansson. Boys soccer, second team all-star Brian Milano. And also boys soccer, second team all-star Patch Pipers. Girls soccer, first team all-star Carter King. Girls soccer, second team all-star Colby Pelosa. Volleyball team, first team all-star Liz Linkletter. Volleyball first team all-star Claire O'Flynn. Volleyball first team all-star Grace Sorensen. And volleyball second team all-star Megan Wallace. That's our group. All right.
I'll take a picture.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Oh, super, thank you. What a great call. Pipe Piper.
Very exciting.
Now I'm going to do the high school rep, and then I'm out.
Can you say, Emily, like I rushed to get the dinner made, and I made flautas for the first time, and I didn't get to eat it. It smelled so
Are
good.
they enjoying them?
I'm like, I just texted him, how are the flautas?
What are flowers?
So you mix up, it's like onions and meat and spices, ground beef, brown it all up, and then you roll them in tortillas with a little bit of cheese, bake them, and then you serve them with fresh creme fresca and homemade pico de gallo. It sounds really good. I'm like, save me a few, please.
Yeah, I hope they're there when you go home. That sounds
Just
good.
put a few aside for me.
Send me your recipe.
It smelled good. It's a HelloFresh thing. I've started doing HelloFresh since that, but I have the recipe.
No.
I just don't have the, I need help. HelloFresh is awesome. 2 nights a week.
Or make it for you, like.
It's nice because my husband's like, what's for dinner? I'm like, it's in the fridge. Knock yourself out.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yay.
I thought we'd have sent something in.
She's our assigned reporter, so she'll be coming back in
Oh, cool.
shortly.
So back to one final, Caroline Jepson is, I think you may have heard me say that she's out doing a college interview today. So she sent her report to me, so that will be my final act as chair, is to read her report.
Okay.
And this is Caroline's report. Hello, Ipswich school community. Actually, Laura, we have a program note. We are being broadcast live on ICAM.
On the ICAM website, yeah, there's an issue with the YouTube link.
There's an issue with our YouTube link. Okay, thank you. Hello, Ipswich school community. Below are some of the happenings at the Ipswich High School. The high school is in the midst of their midterm week, which seems to be going relatively well so far overall. Sports. All sports continue to go well so far. Teams are continuing to practice and prepare for competitions. The Ipswich boys and girls track teams beat Hamilton Wenham, but lost to Amesbury. Clubs. Most clubs are on hold for this week to accommodate the midterm schedule. However, the Green team successfully published their no idling article in the newspaper and are putting signs around town and the high school to make people aware of the no idling law. Additionally, 4 high school seniors received the Presidential Service Award for completing 100 to 250 hours or more community service hours during the year 2021. These students include Ava Borgman, Ella Borgman, Gabriella Ramisi, and myself, Caroline Jepson. So, congratulations, Caroline. That's her report. And with that, I'll turn the gavel over to our most senior member, Dr. Hugh O'Flynn.
Do I have to move? Do I move away there? I think
You can just, I think you can do it from your seat if you'd like.
No,
It's up to you, or you can sit there.
I'll be moving back in 5 minutes.
it's pretty simple.
But there is no gavel.
Yeah, there is a gavel.
There is a gavel, I've never brought it out of the box. The gavel has value.
I think Barry sometimes used the gavel, but
Kill you anyway.
I think he's the only one I remember doing.
So in the event of the resignation of a chairperson, it is the standard that we take nominations for and then vote for a subsequent chair. And as the longest standing member, I have the duty of executing on that. So I would take a nomination for chair of the school committee.
I nominate Greg Stevens.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Anyone else interested in being considered for chairman of the school committee? No one else? All right. You want to say anything in particular about your candidacy?
Nothing much. I mean, I think my time working with Chubb as vice chair has prepared me to the extent that it can for taking on the chair position. And if you'll vote for me to be chair, I'd be willing to accept it and do my best to represent the entire group as best I can.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Sharon.
Get out of my seat.
Shuffle the nameplates.
All right. I think I'm good now. I think I'm all charged up now.
I think the vice chair sees.
So,
You have to switch nameplates.
Yeah, we will. Just settle down and
so I'd like to have a discussion about vice chair before we move forward with a nomination. I'd first like to throw it out to the group and ask who would be interested in taking on the role of vice chair. And I know we've had some discussions amongst us as individual members about folks who have some interest, and I just wanted to put it out now so we can just have a discussion and make sure we're doing this publicly, and everyone can state their case if they choose to be considered. So, anyone want to throw their name in the ring to be vice chair?
I will throw my name in to be vice chair.
Okay.
I was also interested in it, but my understanding is there was an offer previously made, and I don't feel like it's appropriate to disrupt that offer. So I think some discussions probably warranted on how we go about this in the future, but
it should certainly be a public discussion. I want to make sure that if folks are interested now that we're discussing it, if we have one interested party now that would like to move forward, we could have a motion for that, and certainly in the future, make it more of a public discussion earlier on in the process. I don't want anyone to think that things aren't being done in a transparent way, and that any deals were made behind the scenes, because I know that wasn't the case. So we could talk about it now if someone else wants to be considered, or if not, we could take a motion for the one individual who's expressed interest.
So I have a policy question. I know that the chairperson has designated roles by statute, and that we've, at this point, the vice chair or assistant chair, whatever, has been just serving as chair in the absence of a chair and attending meetings. Is there any other statutory role the vice chair has other than those two? And is there anything else that governs how we discuss it? Not really, right?
No, not that I'm
It's just
aware
our discretion. And would we want two vice chairs, or could we have that as a operating plan to divide the duties if we wanted to? That's the only other thing you might consider.
Sure.
It's obviously taking on additional responsibility is an additional burden, but it's always an opportunity if people do want to take on responsibility. And if people are excited to learn more about leadership in the committee and interested in being part of that process to learn what being a chair might be like before you jump into it, I think that's probably valuable. So I wouldn't see why there would be any reason you couldn't have two. You probably need one chairperson, but however many assistant chairs or vice chairs you need would be fine. And that's again up to whether people have that much interest to do that or just to wait.
I would be more than happy to work with two vice chairs if the committee agreed to that. I think that's a great solution. Again, I think getting two other individuals involved in the process, the agenda meetings with Brian, helping out with the load for some of the initiatives we have coming down the pipeline here would be very worthwhile.
I think we have a lot to do. And I also think that, peeking behind the curtain, to see the great Oz for what the great Oz really is probably pretty smart. And you need to demystify positions like chair or vice chair, because there's nothing fancy other than you meet with the superintendent once a week and you kind of chat with the other chairs of committees as the chair, and the vice chair probably is just doing some agenda building and maybe going to some meetings and coordinating with the chair. So I don't see why that position couldn't be divided out and expanded and used to the extent it's necessary.
It's a great solution.
Yeah. Okay.
So just to clarify, so the vice chair goes or attends the weekly agenda planning meetings?
Correct.
And then would,
Typically in the morning.
and is that in person or remote? Just curious.
We've done them in person.
And then what about
But we could be
share calls between other committees?
Traditionally, it's just been the chair.
That's just
but,
the chair.
yeah, and we can certainly have flexibility around those agenda meetings to the extent we needed to with fitting in with other schedules.
But there's also some flexibility in that type of thing where one person could be more involved in, for example, discussions in the new school, another could be more involved in budget stuff, another could be more involved in other things.
Exactly.
I mean, it does give you some direction in the future too, to leadership.
Right.
Because, the people in the committee are changing quickly right now. And it's good to have people with more experience stepping up and understanding it, or less experience.
Yeah. So I'll take a motion
So
for.
Greg, I'm not interested in serving in either position, but I do appreciate the conversation tonight. I do feel that the committee has lacked transparency in the way that executive officers have been anointed, really, and it seemed as though they were in place, or there was an agreement in place prior to having it come to the board. So I think this conversation is a step in the right direction, and I think it helps to bolster the transparency and the trust of the entire committee, and I think that's something that's going to be extremely important as we tackle the really big issues that are coming down.
Right.
So it's a step in the right direction. As to who's interested, I don't know if we have one or potentially two people who would toss their hat, or their names in the ring tonight.
I will say, in the 19 years I've been on the committee, I've never seen a contested election for chair.
Yep.
And vice chair is a relatively new position, so we haven't really talked about it too much. But the way that typically works isn't really, it lacks transparency in that usually it's an individual conversation had between individual members over time. And because we can't meet as a group by statute, then that can't really take place in a group meeting. Maybe it's better to take place in that setting, but oftentimes someone who has experience and has interest will speak privately to individual members. And if they haven't included you in those discussions, whether they just counted to 4 and said, I got what I need and they're out of here, they don't really care, or that it just seemed to be something they've been working for. For example, Greg's been the vice chair for a number of years. He's been very involved in budget, which is taking a priority role this year. And so there seemed to be some sense there. I think long term though, any inkling you have of leadership, you should express it. When you're participating, you'll have an opportunity to talk to more and more members. And if you want to be chair next year, just let people know, because that way we can. The other members of the committee who aren't interested at all in being chair can very happily, give you more responsibility to speak at town meeting, give you opportunities to, understand more about major issues like budget and things like that. So I do think that you need to jump in with both feet on this stuff. And one of the ways you do is just by asking to do more and maybe asking to be thought about as a leadership person in the long run. And again, we defer too much to seniority because realistically, you need maybe 1 or 2 years of seasoning to know who's who and what's what. But after that, you'll know everything you need to be a chair. And Chubb, I don't know how long you were.
I was vice chair. Well, I've been dying to say that.
Yeah.
I was vice chair. It was very helpful to become chair. I was asked I became vice chair by being asked by the chair if I'd like to be vice chair. So it was an individual request. I didn't feel that I was anointed, so I'll take exception with that word that you just used. But I think the vice chair role is very helpful in preparing for the chair role. The chair role is it's a lot of work. Thank you. I apologize.
And you told me it was easy.
I apologize. That's why I'm apologizing now.
It's too late.
And the vice chair role is, I think it's a great role because of the agenda building is really, really helpful to have someone besides just 2 people. I think that when I was chair, I was very careful to be collaborative with everyone. I felt a little insulated as vice chair sometimes when I was vice chair, and I wanted to make sure that there was collaboration between the chair, the vice chair, and the superintendent, and the vice chair was her.
And understand, vice
we've
chairs.
had presidents that do great jobs at collaborating with vice presidents, and presidents that don't do great jobs.
But we've only had a vice chair for 5 years, maybe?
Right.
Less than that.
Less than that. So it's not been something that's been around for a long time.
Vice chair.
It's the only thing we've ever created, really.
And, no, yeah, and Carl and Greg.
So it's relatively new.
It's I think it's great. So.
Well, maybe I just want to support what Jeff's saying. It may be being some of the newer members to this committee, you don't realize how it comes across. But even when I was first, elected, there was already a nomination, and that was that. And moving forward, there was no discussion. It did feel more like an anointment.
Yeah.
And then moving on from there, it was a very quick vote. There was no discussion of throw your hat in or say you want to be involved. There's no discussion about how that comes to be.
Yeah.
And I think this time around, there certainly was conversations being had. There certainly was an offer made. And there certainly was a discussion about why it shouldn't be other people without realistically putting the opening before a group. We all should have found out at the same time you were stepping down. We all should have discussed that's the vacant chair before we move on to the vice chair. I mean, I think it does help. It does help with transparency, and it does help with procedure to have something in place that people understand. If you're interested in doing this work, this is kind of how it works. And we haven't had that, at least in the year and a half that I've been here, and I do think it would be helpful because it's not something that we're publicizing. So that would just be my...
Well, when I became chair and there was a vice chair opportunity, Greg became the vice chair, I did ask members, I think it's really important that the vice chair make a commitment to be to run for chair. So that's just my personal view. So I mean, I had discussions with potential vice chairs, other than Greg.
And I think, pardon me, are you done?
Go ahead.
I'm just going to say, I think Hugh's right in that I think that probably just through tradition there has been some bent towards seniority.
Yeah.
Because I've been approached twice just because I've been on long enough, and I have said each time, I know my executive skills are not in that way that strong, and no thank you very much. But I think it's only because, I've never thrown my hat in the ring. It's just because I've been around, other than Chubb and Hugh, the longest. So I think there is an element of that kind of seniority sort of thing.
And the other problem with the perception is when you start on the committee, the first meeting you have, you're choosing a new chair. You don't even know anything about the committee. You may not have even been sworn in, and all of a sudden everyone's choosing the chair. So that doesn't allow for the type of discussion that you might expect around any election.
I think that might be a great introduction maybe in the future. That's the first conversation we have.
Yeah.
And I think to your point of seniority, I think I would have been the next person at least broached about it and wasn't. And so it seems like there was some history of seniority until it was me, and then...
No one asked me to be chair or vice chair either.
And so I do think there is sort of since it's not, we don't really have a process in place. Sometimes the value of the process is to avoid the appearance of sort of backroom politicking, which I think was the point that Jeff was making. And I would agree that it is, to people who've never sat through an explanation, that is a little bit what it.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, in small groups, what's happened historically for the 20 years I've been here, is you kind of start hinting that, I'd like to be chair someday, and at some point, that opportunity becomes obvious to you when someone's leaving. And, so there are times when, for example, Barry was the senior member, but I wanted to be chair. And I kind of talked to Barry about it before, and I'd be like, I'll be chair for these couple of years. Maybe you can do it for a few. Or he'd be taking a new job or a new responsibility, and he wouldn't want to do it. Or Carl would want to do it. So we had those types of individual discussions among the couple, three of us who were interested in it, and that kind of got hashed out over time. And I think that maybe, to some extent, the lack of transparency may also be that we don't talk freely outside of school committee members as much as we probably should, even though we just learned today that open meeting law forbids us to do large groups. You can individually talk. And, you know, and I can talk to any of you. And if I have a particular interest in being chair next year, then I would probably call you all up and say, I'm pretty interested in being chair. Are you thinking of running? And I'd probably start with the most senior person, deferring to them if they want to run, and I would probably work my way down, or maybe someone who's currently chair. And I think that's probably reasonable in a small group like this, to have those individual conversations, because the lack of transparency is real right now because you guys all feel disenfranchised. But realistically, if we're communicating the way we're supposed to communicate, just, you know, individually, maybe it's easy for us to kind of pick our spots if we want to do something. And for example, you know, if I want to be on budget, I'll tell the chair, hey, I really want to be on budget. And don't just get an assignment when the committees turn over, but tell them in advance, you know, I love athletics and that's all I want to cover this year. And I don't have bandwidth to do 3 things, so it isn't all decided. And that appears not to be transparent, but it's the same story. It's an individual conversation.
But we do have a policy for that. We put in what we're interested in doing, and then the chair shuffles the name around, and we discuss it, that's how it works. And again, I think the only point is maybe we need to reassess how we go about this process. So there's a similar, everybody knows what the expectation is, everybody knows, yeah, there's an email, send around an email, don't respond, but yes, I'm interested, or no, I'm not, and then at the next meeting, we'll vote, or whatever it is. But I think there's a better way to do it than what we're doing currently.
That sounds like a policy subcommittee.
That's a good idea.
It's not really, it's a policy, I mean, you have votes.
Yeah.
That's more of a practice than a policy, though.
Can I say that we're a committee of 7, and I think that two vice chairs is almost is a little much.
I never had a vice chair. I didn't miss
it. I would think one vice chair would be a better.
But the goal of the vice chair is to sort of groom folks to ultimately become chair. And then I think having 2 individuals sharing in what goes on within the chair role is worthwhile. I mean, especially with a packed agenda for the next couple of years, I think there's a lot to be able to delegate. Looking at the clock, I know Mr. Gallant's anxiously waiting to tell us about his field trip, so if we...
May I make a nomination?
Sure.
I'd like to nominate Kate Elliott for vice chair.
Second.
And I nominate Emily for vice chair.
Second.
Co-vice chairs.
All right, so...
If you want it.
We don't, no, we don't need to do that. I was very interested in the position. I, again, stand by the fact that I know it was previously offered. I think you will do an excellent job. I do wish, I would like when we do this again in the spring, we have a policy and we follow it, and there's an opportunity for everybody who's interested to be involved, regardless if they have the longevity Chubb's discussing or the desire to be chair. Maybe they don't. It's just, you know, I think there's room for flexibility.
But despite those previous conversations, there was no decision made. I mean, this is what we're doing now, is the decision, so.
By the committee, right. But I know that, it's just like, the part of transparency in this committee needing to move more in that direction is really saying, yeah, maybe we could have done that better. But I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. I think that's a strength, and that's what I'm saying.
Yep, I agree with that.
Better.
So we have a motion and a second for Kate as vice chair.
And we have one for Emily, too. You'd have to either,
Are you withdrawing?
Yes, as I said before.
Emily's withdrawing.
Withdrawing and respecting what was the process at the time.
Any more discussion for Kate? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Abstain?
Congratulations.
Okay.
And just to clarify, I am not interested in chair next year either, so feel free not to contact me about it.
Okay, Mr. Gallant? You're up. Yeah, that'd be great, yeah.
We participated in called Racing Challenge program since 2013, I think. And it's a program where kids form race teams and they do all the things that a race team would do. They do public relations and fundraising, but they also do mechanical stuff and engineering. And they compete against teams from, it's actually international now, it used to just be mostly East Coast. But there's teams from China now that participate in it also. And throughout the year, kids work on projects. They may work on an engineering project. One kid is using a CNC machine to make wheels for a car. And he does a report on that project and submits it, and you get points throughout the early part of the season. And the teams that are in usually the top 10 in points around this time of year get invited to their finals. So our teams have been invited to their finals, which are typically the last week in April. And I have no idea if this is really going to happen, but I'm proceeding as it's going to happen. You know, we did a leaf-breaking fundraiser. We're going out to local businesses in the coming month or so, fundraising to help defray some of the cost of the trip. But the way it usually works is we leave on a Friday morning. It's at Nova Southeastern University this year, which is in Fort Lauderdale. So we would leave on Friday. They usually have a banquet and some small events on Friday night. And then Saturday are all of the race events, along with teams do team presentations. They do presentations on their engineering projects. And that happens all through the day Saturday. And then they have an award ceremony at the end. And then we come back on Sunday morning. The way the cost usually works out is that our fundraising covers hotels and transportation and whatever meals aren't provided by the event. And usually kids have to pay for the airfare part, which unfortunately Florida in the spring is not the cheapest place to go to. So based on past experience, I'm guessing it's $300 to $400 will be kids that want to go, what it'll cost. I usually ask Leanne, you know, if there's any kids that we should consider for scholarships, and I kind of talk to them privately about it, and we do some of our fundraising money for that. In the past, and I think based on talking, it would be similar this year, I end up with about 30 kids. I have 50 kids in the 2 classes that are in the program, but not all of them end up going for different reasons. Might be the cost, might be sports, different reasons. It's usually the seniors that are more important to, you know, so they all want to go. So in the past, we've ended up with about 30 kids, and usually I bring 3 parents with me, and then I use the fundraising to pay for the parents' airfare and hotels, so they don't have to pay for that. That's about it. I have questions.
So this has not happened for the last 2 school years, right?
2019 was the last time we went to Texas A&M in 2019. The last 2 years it hasn't. It's been, they did it online, basically.
Yep.
We were at school kind of presenting.
I know my son was excited to go in 2020. He was just really upset when it was canceled.
Oh,
so.
yeah, Nate.
Yeah.
Very talented.
Are they mostly southern locations? You said Texas and this is Florida.
They did RPI for a couple of years. I don't know how they picked their locations. It's probably based on the sponsors, the type of sponsors, and the location of the sponsors they get, and their national sponsors they get, how they pick the location. The first 2 years they did Charlotte, which was to me the best location they ever had. It was really cheap to fly there, hotels, easy to get to. Florida tends to be a lot of travel hassles.
Mm-hmm.
People there in the spring.
I can't imagine RBI was easy to get to either.
Yeah, I think we're most excited about RBI.
Do they build the car there, or do they bring a car they built with them?
They bring cars they built with them.
cool. It sounds really neat.
It is. I have kids from multiple years. I've had kids up to 3 years in the program. A lot of kids take it twice. And so typically, the trip is most important to the seniors, so most of them end up going, especially these seniors who really haven't done too much a couple of years.
All right. Any other
Move to support.
Second.
All in favor? Awesome, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have fun. Have a safe trip.
I hope you get down.
Yeah.
I do too. I think the only thing that would stop us is if schools don't want to participate. I think would be the only thing that might stop it from happening.
Okay, Superintendent mid-year review.
Yes, so in your packets this evening, I believe, is a copy of my goals, and I'm just going to walk through. The mid-year review is simply a verbal review that I give to the board just on the status of my goals. This is for the last 4 years. So starting out with goal 1 around curriculum, the goal was to unpack and develop the EL program. District-wide in light of the new EL staffing and the increasing populations of the exhibitors. Progress and then the action items. I'm not going to read every action item. I'll just talk through what's happening with them. The early part of the year was spent understanding the EL department and their needs, looking at the schedules for each of the schools and assessing the needs of the entire department. As a result of that, we ordered new curriculum materials using ESSER funds for the new staff members to ensure that there was continuity across both elementary schools as well as the middle high school program. The EL teachers and I meet monthly as a Compass committee where we continue to unpack the EL standards using the WIDA standards and develop professional agreements with the general education teaching staff, because obviously the EL teachers can't do it alone, and there's some expectations for the regular classroom teachers, so spending time developing all of that. In addition to the Compass meetings focused on the standards, I also meet with the EL staff monthly to review cases, discuss schedules, organize the access testing, which is actually going on last week and this week, and continue to redesign the program given the new staff and their experiences with the new population of students that we're seeing coming in. During the meetings, we also not only discuss the English learner needs of those students, but also how we can help to support those families in our community. The middle and high school EL teacher was able to hold a community event back in the fall. I think folks were invited to it, but I think we did with one of our meetings, where EL students were able to showcase their skills, and trying to do more of those events to integrate into the community. Unfortunately, COVID's kind of put a damper on some of those in-person events. Outside of the EL meetings, I've connected with community members to discuss the needs of our newly arriving EL population and how the school district can best assist them in integrating into our community, and see what other kinds of needs they have other than just
Can you be more specific about that?
I'm sorry?
Which community members?
In particular, the Brazilian community. We've seen a significant increase in the Brazilian population coming in particular to Winthrop School. They're housed in a couple of different places in town. And so we've been working with a family who's been here for a long time and whose children have gone through the system to see how we can better serve that entire population.
And are we partnering with community groups?
I'm sorry?
All right, you mentioned.
There are community partnerships with some of the local churches that I know Lisa Nyland is heading up in particular for different population, the refugee population. Working closely with them. Got a couple of hiccups and some conversations around our
registration materials, for example, and enrollment materials. So we've been taking a closer look at them because in most situations, people that are coming to our school system have all the correct paperwork, but in some of these more recent situations, they're coming with virtually nothing. So we're working our way through that.
Good, yeah, but the one you say was nothing is, I know we have some refugee people that was in town too.
Yeah.
Yeah, House of Peace has traditionally had a long stream of refugee students in our district. That goes back to the beginning of my time and probably well before that. But the other populations are probably the ones that are growing that are different.
Did we fill that teacher spot you were trying to hire?
We did. We
Okay.
did. Finally, the teacher had to give notice. So
But they're here.
I believe they start on Monday.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
I mean, it's been a while, and we've offered the position to several people that backed out because it's hard to find solid candidates mid-year. And so this person we were able to bring on board, but she got to give adequate notice to her district. So continuing on, the Yale team and I have also worked diligently to increase our translation services that are available. The district was, I would say, lacking in that in the past. And so with the new EL teachers and some of the resources that they brought with them, and people that they knew, we've been able to increase our interpreter services as well as being able to translate documents into native native languages. So that's been a big help, and we've got some budget funds moving forward this year for next year's budget that will help with that as well.
and the smaller programs too.
Yep.
Framing.
Yeah.
And
That's one of the
that's
things
a
that we did for
translation
them.
program.
By the end of the year, I fully anticipate that the action items in this goal will be completed. We'll have published the EL program guide. There is one in place in the process of updating. Moving over to the second goal, management operations. The environment was the first one, ensure the successful integration of the new elementary administrators into the schools. A number of action items there. Progress toward that goal. Both new principals are formally being mentored by Kathleen McMahon. We meet with them on a regular basis. In addition to Kathy's formal mentoring and induction meetings, I also meet with them on a weekly basis. During the meetings, we discuss all aspects of the school environment, from their school councils and fries to classroom observations, dealing with staffing issues, understanding the ebb and flow of the school year and the school day. COVID certainly increased the challenges that both principals are facing. Both principals attended a Rotary meeting with me in the fall and did a presentation to the Ipswich Rotary, Ipswich Rowley Rotary. During the presentations, they each talked about their backgrounds and their experiences and their initial impressions of the school system and the buildings. I thought the presentations went very well, and they were both very well received by the Rotarians, and they were offered support as they settled into their positions. To date, I've been able to attend several school council meetings and faculty meetings. My purpose, and that's not just the elementary schools, that's all levels. My purpose in attending the meetings is, to participate in some of the discussions as appropriate, and then follow up with the administrators. Although several of those have been canceled, I'm looking forward to attending the rest of the calendar. And that's both school councils and faculty meetings at each level. And then finally, at one of our administrative team meetings each month, we utilize the state optics system to view and discuss teacher observations. So there's classroom videos of teachers teaching that are, put out by the state, and then the administrative team reviews those and looking for particular standards, particular topics, and so we watch those individually outside of the session. They're all rated, and then we come together, and then we spend the entire leadership team meeting reviewing those. And in doing so, it helps to calibrate what each of the administrators are seeing in the same observation, so that it helps with our teaching staff that they're being evaluated fairly when we're doing observations. So that's worked out well. Early in the school year, the Educator Evaluation Committee reviewed the evaluation process. All of the administrators are on the EdEval team, so we all had a refresher on the evaluation process. And then the administrative team, leadership team had several follow-up conversations during our meetings, just to make sure that the new administrators were up to speed and everybody was comfortable with the process. The second goal there is facilitating the comprehensive district accountability review. That is in the process of just getting off the ground. We were notified back in the fall that this would be happening this year. It's a process that Ipswich has not gone through in at least 8 or 9 years now, because we have no record of it being done. It certainly hasn't been done in the 5 years that I'm here, and I don't believe it was done in the 4 years that Bill Hart was here, Superintendent. So it was our turn. In the fall, we were notified that it would be taking place, but they hadn't set any dates for it. They just notified us last week that that we needed to set the time. So before the holidays, I attended a webinar that explained the whole process and what we'll be going through, and a potential timeline at that point. They contacted us, Bessie, contracted with a company called AIR, American Institute for Research, to conduct a district-level review that assesses district systems, enabling district leaders to reflect on progress and strengthen performance. The review will be looking at the systems, policies, and practices that drive the day-to-day operations of the district. AIR itself reached out to us last week to introduce themselves and begin the conversation about the on-site visit. We picked the week of April 11th for the on-site to take place. Over the next 2 months, we will be gathering, reviewing, and uploading all the required documents. It's a fairly heavy lift of information that they're looking for, because they're assessing all of the standards. We're looking at everything from school committee policies to day-to-day operational pieces and workflows, and you name it. They look at every aspect of the system: curriculum and instruction, assessment, supervision, and evaluation. So it's a full look at our entire school year.
Do you know what their turnaround time is to get back to us with a?
I don't. There's 11 school districts in the state that are going through this process this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what that means as far as the turnaround.
Okay.
But they'll be here the week of April 11th. They haven't given us. We told them the week. They'll give us the exact days. They may be here for 3 or 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, they'll be conducting interviews with different constituent groups and things like that. And so beforehand, they want to have all this information uploaded to a system that they're providing us. So we'll be doing that over the next 2 months. So in the next couple of weeks, there'll be a call with them to identify the interview groups that they would like to see. and they'll set the schedule with us and answer any questions like that. Obviously, it's not just me that'll be having to be involved in that. So the leadership team will be engaged in the process. I would anticipate that they'll be reaching out to school committee members as well as information. Obviously, that goal will be accomplished by the end of the year. The third goal around district improvement, family and community engagement, around engagement and communication in particular. The first goal was providing opportunities for unifying the elementary schools around the elementary ed plan as well as the Vision 2030 document. Progress toward that early in the school year, I met weekly with the two new principals to facilitate and also facilitated meetings with Tracy Wagner to build the collaboration between the two principals. They've been working very closely together all year long. This year there's significantly increased collaboration between not only the principals but the teachers in each building. Examples include joint efforts to produce one report card. Historically, there's been two separate report cards, and so now we're working with all of the teachers between the two schools to produce one report card for all elementary students, the way it should be.
Sorry, I have another question.
Yep.
Do you think it's prudent for us to review our Vision 2030 and our elementary ed plans in light of COVID in the past 2 years? I feel like, given what teachers are going through now, given what students have been through, what we hoped probably needs adjusting, and the supports probably need adjusting, and the goals probably would be well served by reviewing instead of rolling out with a plan that just got completely flipped on its head for 2 years.
Yep. And actually, one of my comments in here later is that the Vision 2030 subcommittee has to schedule a meeting.
That's on me.
And can we do the elementary ed plans as part of that? Or does that have to come from the?
Perhaps. I don't know the answer to that without giving it some thought.
Okay, maybe worth a discussion then.
Yep.
Sorry.
So we have the examples include the joint efforts to produce a report card for the elementary schools, the new math coaching model between the two elementary schools, and the new math program. And we started building learning cycles across the two schools. So the two elementary schools are getting together periodically to engage in the learning process around curriculum issues together. In early meetings, we discussed the history and background of the elementary ed plan for the district and how it fits in with the secondary plan as well. The administrative team spent time reviewing and revising the strategy for district improvement and set expectations for the year. And then my final comment is just that Vision 2030 needs to be. The second goal was to facilitate the submission of a new SOI to MSBA by the spring of 22. The goal is only going to be partially completed as far as the action items go. The early timeline that was established with the school committee was not feasible given the sequence of events around Violet Park. The revised timeline, I think, is much more doable with the intent to have the submission in the spring of 2023, perhaps. I worked with the School Facilities Working Group and presented to the school committee 2 contracts that were approved at our last meeting. One was for an in-depth demographic study by NESDEC. They do our annual report every year on demographics and student population. Excuse me. Well, we decided as a group that we wanted to have a more robust report done. We signed the contract, and actually just this morning I got an email from them asking for information on who our town planner was, so they could have interviews with them around construction and building and move-ins and move-outs. And they also, that's me this evening, I'm sorry. They also asked for information on area realtors. I think Laura may have reached out to some of you about who you've dealt with in terms of real estate.
Laura can buy a house now. Plenty to choose from.
So that was one piece, and then the second contract was to work with the Loge Group to facilitate our listening sessions with the community around building to any potential building project that we might undertake. It was made clear in our work with the Loge Group early on that the listening sessions should be facilitated by an outsider and not any of us necessarily. That we can be part of the process. So the listening sessions will take place in the coming months, and based on the outcome of those conversations, I think the rest of these items in this goal will be completed. In terms of when we have a direction and we know where the consensus is in the community, we can build around that as far as community outreach goes, messaging, etc.
So what's the next step with Bill Loge? Where do we go?
So the contract has been signed with Bill Loge, and so he'll be developing a calendar for us and reaching back out to us to schedule probably a workshop session with us first, just to begin organizing those listening sessions and guiding questions that we need answered. And then he'll actually facilitate running all of those meetings, and we'll help get them scheduled.
Didn't we pull that in advance for a couple of weeks for Covet as well?
Yeah.
And then the last goal was around cultural proficiency, was to actively lead the DEI committee established within the school district this year. It's an advisory group to help move from pockets of self-identified interest in DEI to district-wide learning practices. The DEI group was formed in October. The DEI group was formed in October. We held our first meeting on October 28th. The group is currently made up of representatives from each building in terms of staff who had expressed interest in the group, and as well as 5 high school students, all with diverse backgrounds. The group spent considerable time exploring ideas and developing a vision statement. What they settled on was, as the Ipswich Public Schools Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, we believe that a community is stronger together. Our vision is to create a district of learners dedicated to amplifying marginalized voices, prepare students to become compassionate and active global citizens, will celebrate the diversity within and beyond our community while confronting issues of equity and inclusion in our practices and learning environments. And it took, I want to say, at least 2 meetings and a subgroup to develop that, and the kids were mission critical in developing that. So it was really a grassroots effort. I'm proud of the work that they've done. The students on the committee, they have an active voice and help guide the work of the committee. Our recent meetings have focused on tangible projects that this group can undertake during the year. Each meeting has an agenda and notes are taken. The first project that the group is tackling is a website form where anyone in the school community can report issues or concerns anonymously to the administration. Essentially come right directly to me for follow-up. And what's interesting about it is what I thought was going to be a simple Google form with just, some very broad language. Ended up being, a 45-minute conversation with this group, going back and forth, trying to, not wordsmith it, but they didn't want the form to be too restrictive, that it could only be for social justice issues, but rather they didn't want it to, and they also didn't want it to be so broad that, you could report that the curbing is broken on the driveway. So we're trying to finesse that. I told them that I would work on it and bring it back. But
where does it go if it's about you?
I'm sorry?
Where does the complaint go if it's about you?
If it's about me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess we'd have to include that on the form.
Yeah.
But it'd have to go to the school committee chair.
I don't know, we're just dealing with that at work, so I was curious how you guys.
Say something I need to know.
No.
The group is also actively engaging and looking at resources from the Anti-Defamation League, specifically the No Place for Hate initiative, and that would be in all 4 schools, as well as their peer mentoring program. There's an interest amongst the high school kids to participate in the peer mentoring program, but that has a waiting list for involvement. So the kids, I think, are going to fill out the application this year, and we're going to submit it, but it may not be for a year or 2 before we're able to get involved in the peer mentoring program. It's pretty extensive. It's a workshop during the summer for an extended period of time. It's work with the kids during the school year, that they actually have people come in and work with our students, provide the peer mentor training. So it's a pretty involved process, but the kids have an interest in it, and so we're going to pursue it. Other work completed toward this goal included finishing a course for administrators last month entitled Supporting Culturally Responsive Classrooms and Schools. We're also doing book talk as part of the learning cycle work here at the high school on culturally responsive teaching. It's actually one of the books that I think I gave to the last committee. That too. And that is it. I know, sitting around reading the Globe the rest of the time.
Any questions for Brian?
Yes, mine.
Changes, any, things that I, in particular, that you want to see, or?
Got a question regarding some of the budgeting issues we addressed the other day. Not everyone's in the knowledge of them. But did some of your mentoring of the new administrators lead to, for example, supporting a new assistant principal position, supporting new staff members at a couple grade levels, supporting more ELL positions? Is that supporting the administrators' needs? Is that just response to this year? Is that something you've seen coming over time?
I think it's a combination of things. I think part of the mentoring process has been that the new administrators sat with Cheryl around budget issues. They also sat with Kathy and Eileen Young, who's a master at the budget process, worked with them as well to help answer questions as we were starting to develop the process. Particular positions, I think, the assistant principal position that we'll be bringing forward with the budget, something that's been talked about for years. Every year, I think at least 3 of the 5 years that I'm here, it's been included in the early stages of the budget and has not made it through the process. So yes.
Okay.
I think I answered.
Just wondering, yeah.
Is there any part of this that you feel, given the year we're having and given the added assessment, was an overreach, to be fair?
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't know that it's an overreach. I mean, you know, for example, the Yale program, that work needed to be done and couldn't wait. And you know, I think we're making great strides in that area with the Yale program itself, and with you know, taking steps to engage the greater community around those. So those kinds of things needed to happen. I think just recognition that it's a busy year, and it's, you know, what we anticipated back in, you know, July, August, September was a return to normalcy, and I think we've gotten anything but that. You know, when I read my superintendent's report and look at the numbers of COVID cases and the work that's gone into that, and just all of the different pieces, it's another crazy, hectic year. I mean, we haven't had a normal school year in 3 years.
And are you soliciting feedback from the elementary school teachers and staff who've been there about how the integration of the new principals are going, or are we just doing like a top-down analysis?
Nope. I've had several meetings with staff members from each building who have shared concerns and positive things that they're saying. So certainly listening feedback, and we need it. And I share that feedback with the administrators. So that's how they grow. So.
Okay. Anyone else?
Was it just luck that you picked this year to focus on ELL?
No, it actually started last year. It was a concern of mine last year in terms of how the programming was working, particularly at the secondary level, and then we had the changes in staffing. So it just kind of brought it to the top of the list.
All right. Thank you. All right, school choice. I guess at our last meeting, we agreed as a committee, I guess in principle, to move forward with school choice. So in our folders tonight, it looks like we have a breakdown of the school by school and grade by grade recommendations from the administrators, and also the data from last year.
Do we have a, like the October 1st or January 1st school census numbers? Is that a file somewhere that we can access quickly? It would help us to see the population in each grade when we're referencing these numbers.
Let me talk a little bit about it. I have it in my file here, my email.
And we have to vote these choice numbers by grade.
Correct. Yep. So I guess what stands out to me, and this I guess is no surprise based on our budget subcommittee meetings the last couple of weeks, is the dramatic drop in recommendations for Winthrop, and it's obviously due to the enrollment issues they're having there, the number of new kids that have come in, not only beginning of the year but mid-year. So I know she's grappling with that. I guess the question I would have between Winthrop and Doyon's requesting or recommending a total of 18, Winthrop is 6. Is there going to be any discussion around, I think we had touched on it briefly, sort of moving that gray area a little bit to try to compensate for the enrollment differences in the two schools? And if so, how do we take that into account when we're looking at these numbers?
As far as the choice numbers go, I don't think we do. I think we look at that separately from the gray area.
Okay.
But I do think that the gray area does warrant a more in-depth conversation, and maybe needs to be something that we discuss as a school committee. We draw up some maps and and look, because the gray area over the last couple of years has been extremely difficult for us to navigate. And becoming increasingly so, because we have situations where 1 year they're going to Doyon, and the next year they're going to Winthrop. When we were talking to the budget subcommittee.
When I was a kid, my brothers and I went to Winthrop, the other two went to Doyon. So you just shifted it around. So literally, one bus would come for Winthrop, the next one would come for Doyon. Same neighborhood.
So for grade 3 last year, just take grade 3, we opened up 9 choice slots, and 1 was filled, if I read the document right. So my experience with opening up choice slots is they don't get filled often.
We had a total of 93 openings last year and filled a total of 16.
Right.
So remember, the goal of an administrator is to look at average class size in a particular grade, assure that they can accommodate the students they have, plus a little flexibility, and then add whatever choice students they can add to still fill that up. In areas where they're already full to the brim, they can't do any. In areas where they have a little extra flexibility, they can do plenty. And if we see an opportunity where we could cut a section in a grade and consolidate, that's an opportunity for us to make a move to cut a section. Because every grade's been 3 classes and it's really hard to cut from 3 to 2, that really hasn't been an issue, but going 4 to 3 and 3 to 4 used to happen all the time. And this coming year, we're looking at a couple 3 grades going from 3 to 4, which would add capacity if you add the teachers, but you also don't want to have to add the teacher due to choice students, because then suddenly a money maker is a money loser. So that's the elementary decision piece. The middle school decision piece is just to fit the middle school model, which traditionally accommodated 160 kids per class. Now it really accommodates maybe 140 kids per class. And high school, it's no particular grade because they really assign teachers based on kids they assign at each class. So high school is more flexible. So really the one to focus on is the elementaries. We want to make sure that we don't end up pinched because of decisions we make adding choice kids. Recognizing, as Chubb said, that historically, at least recently, we didn't get a lot of kids in. But 10 years ago, we were getting 100 plus kids in.
That many, wow.
Not in 1 year, but we had lots and lots of kids' choice in the school.
Well, and I think part of it,
180?
correct me if I'm wrong, part of it is what's going on in surrounding districts. There were a number of years where I understand we had a lot of students from the Raleigh.
Raleigh gave us 100 kids.
Triton
some years.
Until Triton built their new school, we had a lot of students from there. And so that's, we saw that population come up through, and now we're at the very tail end of that now. We're graduating a lot of those
to some extent, it's providing an opportunity to parents who are looking for change, or looking for specific things, or are, grandma lives in Ipswich, or they want to play on the volleyball team, or the football team, or the entire Danvers moves here to play football, right? So. But
music programs.
Our music program's been hugely popular over many years, drawing kids in for choice. And these are opportunities for kids, and we get great students and great kids. A lot of the kids you saw tonight are choice kids.
So, I have the October 1st enrollment.
Oh, yeah. Can you tell me what that's called?
Up on my screen?
If we search our Google Drives, that enrollment?
I don't know that it was in your packets. I get an email to me every month, so I just went back in my email. Pull it out. Would you like me to send it?
Yeah, email it to us if you could.
While he's sending that, do you want to, we did emphasize last week how great that choice kids are to our kids, and have been in the past. I want to talk fiscal stuff for a second. We now have $1,280,000. We got another 14 grand in this just in the last month since December, or 2 months, it seems. But it is, I know outside the stabilization account, it's our largest account and our greatest relief valve for budget issues. We took in $225,000 last year. I forgot to say what we paid out because we have kids choicing out of the district.
We don't pay out choice, the town pays out choice.
Really?
It's not subtracted from our budget.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's just an assessment.
It's an assessment.
It's an assessment that they get on their cherry sheet.
Yeah.
Do they deduct their contribution to us?
I mean, I think they eventually attribute
It's
it.
it's a cherry sheet piece, but actually, it's illegal to do a net sum.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So this is only a gain? Because it was 138,000.
It's only a gain. It's a town loss. It's a town loss overall, so it hurts the net numbers. But we take 60% of those numbers.
So it doesn't come out of our,
It's
not straight out of our budget.
We just got 225 then, even though 138 was paid out.
Correct.
Interesting. Okay. I learned that. Thank you. So it's
send that.
Thank you, got it.
It's a very helpful revenue source.
So Doyon, 59, 53, 51, 61, 65, 62. All pretty great numbers. Winthrop kindergarten seems to be the only one that's stressed.
Yeah.
The others all look okay. Maybe fourth grade to fifth
they've
grade.
had, there was when was the recent influx of students to Winthrop? It was after this report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After this?
I'm going to pull up.
This is October 1st.
Yeah, I have November 1st when I searched in my,
I have October
What's the November
1st.
1st one called then?
They're all Aspen sysadmin info.
Report 908.
I'm going to look at the December 1st one. So December,
Net Winthrop's a concern, right, to the population
Yeah.
for choice. So we should focus on grade 4, which is the only place.
so Winthrop's kindergarten, December 1st was at 69. First grade was at 52, second grade was at 59.
But they're only asking for grade 4.
Yeah, she's only asking
No,
for
but
it.
I'm responding to
Yeah.
your question about the kindergarten being,
Okay.
and the influx of
Yeah.
kids after that.
Remember, I think I've already seen the proposal for more teachers there. So kindergarten, first grade, and maybe fourth grade were the ones they talked about adding staff potentially, right? Or fifth grade, maybe fifth. But I can see where the kindergarten to first grade would probably get a staff member, and maybe kindergarten next year.
Geez, the fourth grade's just
Pre-K,
as stressed as
K, and
kindergarten.
one.
Pre-K, K, and one of the three they're looking at? Okay,
Yeah.
that's what it is. So fourth grade looks like it has space in these.
Fourth grade for next year?
Yeah, so basically,
47.
whatever's third grade next year would be fourth grade. Third grade this year would be fourth grade next year.
And they have that's the low number, that 46.
Yeah.
Right.
So they could take, so if 6 came, which 6 won't come,
They could,
that would be 52.
right, which is still well within.
And that's 17 students per class for the rest of the way. So that's definitely doable.
Yeah. Do you want to make a motion to support the sixth grade, grade 4 number for Winthrop?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor? All right, Doyon.
Grade 2.
It's grade 1 this year.
52 in it, right?
Yep.
Grade 2's they're pretty light.
Yep, so those are lighter grades.
And 10 in grade 3.
20 students grade, if everybody takes
Yep.
the Chiefs.
Seems reasonable.
I'll make a motion to support grade 2, 8 students.
Second.
All in favor? Want to do grade 3 as well? That was the lighter number
I
anyway.
haven't looked at it yet.
Grade 3 is 47.
47.
Oh.
Could you discuss it?
Sure.
I'll make a motion to support 10 students in grade 3 as well.
Second? Anyone?
Second.
Wait, we're going a little fast for me. What's the,
We're looking at the grade 3 for Doyon. There's 47 students this year in grade 2, so we'll add 10 for next year potentially. Was there a second?
Second.
Yep, Pop seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor? Middle school?
So for the middle school, you want to look at obviously 5th grade of the 2 schools combined is somewhere around 120. So pretty much all the grades are 120 or below. And it's likely you lose a few kids transitioning from 5th to 6th grade to, say, St. John's Prep or one of the other private schools. And so the 8 is probably a judgment by the principal that she can support 8 plus whatever move-ins there are and still keep her model.
Yep.
Did you say earlier that the middle school model was at 160 per class?
So in the old days, it was
That's the old
160
days.
per class. I think it might be set lower than that now, because that was to support 2 blocks of 4 sections of 20. So basically, you have English, math, science, and social studies traditionally. And there were 2 sections in each grade, and there are 20 in each class, so that'd be 160. Now they have the humanities model now, and the civics thing, and it's a little bit different. They run different numbers in that. But that was the old estimate was.
We have a
160.
combined 5th grade class of 123 right now. So pretty light.
Yeah, no, it's about par.
Yeah, so we could certainly support the request.
So I move to support the middle school grades 6, 7, and 8 next year for 8 positions in each grade.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay.
High school, 25 students, not specific to a particular grade. I want to send it back for homework and get it assigned unless there's someone can explain the reason for it not being assigned.
Yeah, so John's talked about that. He brought it up last year, too. He said at the high school level, kids take classes out of grade level pretty commonly.
Yeah.
And really, he assigns teachers based on the demand for a certain class or a certain number.
Okay.
So he has more flexibility. It's not so much grade to grade.
And we also have, we have 127 in the 8th grade class moving up. And the current freshman, sophomore, and junior classes are 131, 136, and 128 as of October. So they're pretty light anyway.
Okay.
They're historically light, but
Yeah.
still, they're the biggest classes in our district.
Right, right,
Yeah.
but relative to, yeah, past.
So here's where we were with that. We got 3, 3, 3, and 1 last year.
Mhm.
Right?
And we opened 10 in each grade.
Yeah.
Right, so traditional move-in grade is 9.
9.
So let's just say we have a smallish 9th grade class coming up, because you're going to lose a few kids, 8th to 9th grade. And maybe we get 10 or 12 9th graders coming in. You could support that in a more flexible model. Whereas sophomore and junior year aren't common, and senior year kids shift around just for their own purposes. People rarely come here as seniors because our graduation requirements are higher than most surrounding schools. So a lot of times, historically, that's been kids going to a less demanding school so they can graduate more easily.
Okay.
Have you gotten a lot of inquiries for choice, Laura? Because you feel...
Yeah, typically we get our most phone calls around this time anyways. We always have to decide on private schools at this time, so we're getting the calls. People are anxious to get applications in.
Private school applications have already been accepted most places, and most kids are getting their acceptances now.
Okay.
So they really do need to know. Ideally, you let them know earlier.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest every year at this time.
Can I get a motion to support?
I move to support 25 flexible positions at any grade in the high school.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Hopefully they'll be 25 and 1.
I know, right? Okay. Finance update, Cheryl.
Thank you. So as far as an update on where we stand for FY '22, it's much of the same story that you've been pretty much hearing from me. We're still tracking, on budget compared to last year. Our percent utilized is a little bit lower, but again, that's because the contracts haven't been settled, so we haven't actually expended those dollars. So when you factor that in, we're right on track with where you were last year from a budget perspective. Does anyone have any questions on the budget you'd like me to answer? If not, I'll just give you a quick update on revolving gift and stabilization funds. We have about $543,000 in our gift funds, about $3.4 million in revolving, and about 3.3 in your stabilization funds, for a total of about 7.2 million in other funding sources available to you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Cheryl?
How is the EDP revenue tracking? I know last year it wasn't a program, so is that back on track to what it has historically been, or is that an increase now?
I wouldn't say it's an increase. I'd say it's tracking pretty close to where it was before.
Do we have more kids this year? Because I know we opened it up for a larger, or without limits.
So we did open it and allow more students to register. I don't have the daily attendance, but I know that the programs are full. He has, some days he's got 80 or 90 students, and other days he's got far fewer. I know that because of COVID, he has hired some additional staff this year. He's a brand new director, and so he's more or less finding his way and looking at the program. He's doing what I've asked him to do in terms of getting the program jump started this year. He came in over the summer to start a lot of that work. We've been able to introduce some new programming to the EDP program. We've stopped some of the things that we had done historically, and just trying some new types of activities for the kids. And from what I understand, it's being very well received. Again, COVID is certainly having a significant impact on what he's able to do in the program. We've had, concerns around contact tracing and notifications of families, but we've been dealing with issues as they've come up.
Parents are still working remotely in a lot of cases. I would imagine that still impacts the numbers. It's not like it was.
Right.
Couple specific questions. Food services, because of the way food service has been kind of topsy-turvy the last couple of years, is that up or down? Are we seeing problems with that budget because of COVID, or is it pretty much standard?
No, because we've received so much outside federal funding.
Right, I see the numbers a lot bigger than it's been historically.
Yeah, so we haven't really been having to expend any of our own revenue out of food service. It's been pretty much fully supported by federal funding. Yes.
And what's the thought on that transitioning away? Is that free food forever? Is that free food for another year, just for the COVID?
I mean, there is some discussions of making it a potentially permanent program. I don't know exactly where that stands, but I do know there have been some discussions about that.
Sorry.
Is that meeting our needs, our budget needs? The money we're getting to cover?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. If anything, the issue is more so supply chain issues with getting the food.
That's what I was going to ask, because
Yeah.
I know it was not
Yeah, it's been
standard at all.
No,
And I
and
don't know
so
if that's-
often, she's running out to Market Basket or something to supplement.
Now, are we still assessing the food services department for rent, i.e. heat, giving them some part of costs for their segment of the building? We've done that in the past.
So, yes, you have, but I believe it was told to me, and I can confirm it when the auditors come in, that we're not allowed to do that, actually.
So, yeah,
With
maybe
food
update us on
services.
that piece at some point when you know
Yeah.
more about it. I remember doing that. And then the Ipswich Athletic Complex, historically, fees charged to groups that are renting the athletic complex are eventually, there's supposed to be a revolving account for which we pay for people cleaning it and so forth, but they're also eventually supposed to add up to the amount to redo the turf in 12 to 15 years. $9,000 probably isn't enough to redo the turf, so we're probably not on target. So if we get asked that question, we just got to say, we're not renting it enough to be able to cover that.
Right. And I think he mentioned that during our budget meetings about they have some groups or something this summer. Do you
Yeah,
know
we've
anything?
got the flag football program that's coming in. They rented the field this past fall.
Good.
And that looks like it could be a long-term relationship with significant support.
That's great.
Yeah, they were there. They took a lot of time at the field, which is great. That's the group. Matt Beaver, who used to work for the Y, runs that flag group now. Now, Cheryl, a question on the FEFI's funds. The balance that's in here now, will that eventually be drawn down as the grants are ultimately funded, or is this the balance that's there above and beyond the grants that are?
It's above and beyond.
So you
that,
sort of.
Is that the amount for the school, for the building out there that we have put aside?
That
or
was
is that different?
575.
Yeah, I thought so too. It's like,
Yeah, I believe this amount is actually money that we need to turn back.
So the rest, all the grants have I don't know what the term is, encumbered that money separately for,
Yes.
and then
Yeah,
this is just extra.
They sit
Okay.
separately.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're over by, so we have 375 or 372 roughly that we'll have to consider sending back at the end of the fiscal year.
Is that accumulated over the last several years? Or is that just from last year?
No, well, I think
We sent some back.
last year, or it was netted out of the.
It was netted out of the distribution. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know last year, we do the big field trip grant, and I think because of COVID, that just wasn't
Right.
used at all.
And I think some of these you might find some of that happening again this year.
Okay. All right, we'll just keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Cheryl? All right, Superintendent. There we are, Superintendent Administrative Report.
So, two pieces. I'll start with the COVID update. This week, I reported 50 cases to the state on Wednesday. Last week, for that same 7-day period, I reported 62 cases, so we're starting to see the numbers come down. The week after vacation, just to refresh your memory, I reported 129 cases. We saw that spike then. The positivity rate in Ipswich is 13.4%, and there's currently 131 active cases. Last week we were 164 active cases. I'm sure that everyone's aware of the governor's announcement yesterday morning about new testing program. Superintendent's had about 10-minute lead on the announcement by the governor. We got a phone call or an email Monday night that there was a meeting with us Tuesday morning at 8:30. It was literally that small a window. And the phone conference with the commissioner lasted about 2.5 minutes, where he basically said, there's a new testing program coming out. Governor's going to announce it soon. Stay tuned, there'll be more information. And that's all we had to go on. So by noontime, after I finished meetings, everybody else knew about it, and I still had no clue what was going on. So the way I spoke with the nurses, I got all the details on it, and after discussing it with the nurses, we decided that we will be participating in the school district. I completed the enrollment paperwork on Tuesday, and now we're trying to work out the logistics of that. We were on a webinar yesterday and spent time talking today during their faculty meeting time. Just about the rollout. The letter will be going out to staff likely tomorrow with an overview of the process, instructions for opting into the program. Everybody has to opt in, and approximately when the testing will start. The kits, when I signed up for the program, it's going to be on alternating weeks, and so the first go around will be for the staff members. So I ordered 390 kits for our entire staff. We anticipate that those will be delivered. They're getting shipped on Monday. Hopefully we'll have them by midweek. At least that's what the commissioner is saying. We should have them by midweek. And then we'll get them dispersed to the staff. And then we have to decide on a day when the staff will test, and then report results to us. And the state has actually, I think, done a nice job with this piece. They've provided all the forms. We just have to get them into our own documents, our own letterhead and whatnot. But they've provided all the forms to opt in and the letters to go out and things like that. We just have to format. They're also translatable, so that we'll be able to get them out to families in their native language. And so that's for the staff. And then 1 week later, we'll be doing the same thing for students. So the nurses will be ordering the test kits for the students at their schools, and that'll be on the off weeks that the tests will be delivered. This process is going to go on until at least the middle of April, I think is when it's set for. And so when the teachers receive their kits, for example, and I'm just making this up, we haven't determined what day we're going to do any testing on or anything like that. So please don't hold me to it. But next week, say the teachers all test on Friday, then the following week, the kids would test, would have their first test, and the teachers would have their second test. So everybody's going to be tested every week, but we're just starting with the teachers this first week. And every other week we'll get a delivery of tests to the district. So each teacher will get a test kit next Thursday or Friday. They'll test then, and they'll test 1 week later. And we plan on rolling it out like that. I mean, that's how it's designed. So again, I've got to work out all the logistics with the nurses. We're going to spend time hammering that out so I can get some messaging out around it tomorrow.
It's exciting.
It's very exciting. The nurses were doing the happy dance when they heard the announcement, because what it essentially does is it eliminates any need for contact tracing. Takes that all off their plates. Parents will be filling out the form, staff will be filling out the form. If they're positive, it automatically feeds into the spreadsheet, record keeping. It'll make it easier for us to report our data to the state on a weekly basis. So it's really a game changer. We'll still be doing the symptomatic testing in the school. So if kids come in and and they're not feeling up to par, and they go to the nurse, we can and will continue to swab them here. Staff, the same thing, but it certainly cuts down on the amount of that testing.
And it eliminates financial barriers too.
It
It eliminates financial barriers to families.
True.
I mean,
True.
Anna doesn't come over because it's $80.
Right, right.
What are we doing about kids who had COVID? Why are we testing them, or are we testing them?
So it's an opt-in program, and so the directions will be included whether or not those students should be opting into the program and what we need to do.
And what's the prevailing theory on that? Because I've heard once kids get, or once anybody gets COVID, you've got about a 90-day window where...
For an antigen test, it's a week, maybe 5 days where your antigen test is positive. Your PCR test will be positive for a while.
Right.
But we're not doing PCRs, you're doing antigen tests.
Right, but if kids have, or if anybody has, a teacher has COVID, are we then making them continue to test? Are they likely to contract it again?
Here's the thing, we're not making anybody test.
You know what I mean?
So, yeah.
What are we?
I don't.
You can contract it again. It's super common to get, for example, Omicron after Delta. In fact, you get very little protection. You get some, but not a ton. We've seen a lot of double and triple COVIDs.
So I'd imagine that parents will be wanting, that's kind of the question percolating now is, do I have to worry? Do I have to keep testing my kids? Some doctors are saying come in, some are saying not.
Great point. I'll ask them, we can include that in our message.
Are we prepared as far as substitutes, assuming that asymptomatic tests maybe will have higher people getting positives that they wouldn't have tested for?
I asked that very question to the nurses, and they don't think that we're going to see an increase as a result of the at-home testing.
I mean, the old adage probably goes that if you test positive, the first thing you do is test again, just to double sure, and then once you've had 2 positive tests, then I think you're going to see more positive.
But to answer your question, if we do see a spike, I think we're in a much better place than we were 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
And again, the numbers of parents, I think, have been, some parents have been testing their kids on a regular basis, and so we're not anticipating any sudden spike again as a result of participating in this program.
And this is just anecdotal, but I had a patient who actually was a PCR positive. And we accidentally tested her coming in, and we thought, oh God, well, it's going to be, we're not supposed to test people. And she was only 10 days after her first PCR, she was negative already. So I was shocked. But Omicron seems to be different.
It goes away quicker.
It seems to.
Comes and goes quick.
Okay. So more to come on that, but it is a slow rollout process. The kits have been ordered for the staff that'll be in next week and delivered to staff, and then the following week after that is when we'll see kits for kids. So there'll be 2 tests sent home, a box with 2 test kits in it for every student. Rotated. But more to come. I think that's it as far as the COVID stuff goes.
And we also have, Biden's offering 4 tests to every home.
Right.
I will say that's discrimination against large families, because I have 7 family members and 4 tests, and some people have 1 family member and get 4 tests.
Right.
Actually, it's perfect in our family.
Okay, moving on to the rest of my superintendent's report. Past 2 weeks have been largely focused on the budget and budget development. Cheryl and I met with each of the administrators and directors to review their budget requests, compile a budget and then look to see where reductions can be made or alternative funding sources to be utilized. You'll see next week when you receive the budget, it's pretty creative. We used a lot of different funding sources that we haven't typically used in the past. Negotiating team met to discuss strategy moving forward. You'll hear an update during the executive session, which we still have later this evening. I met with the fire chief, the facilities director, and the science consultant that was hired as a result of a PAIN grant to look at our science classroom spaces. He's finalizing his report and wanted some feedback on some of his proposals for updating some of the lab spaces. So we thought it best at the early stage to get those players involved in terms of talking about what we can and can't do to classrooms, since we're, potentially moving electrical lines and water lines and everything else, and some fire codes are involved. So we should have that report fairly soon. I attended the Ipswich Aware meeting this past Tuesday. The Educator Evaluation Committee met last week, as well as the Communications Subcommittee. I met with Jerry Dolan to talk about music schedules for next year. Potentially, just looking at all of the music schedules and what they look like and trying to understand them a little bit better, because there's some not misinformation, but misunderstanding about a couple of the schedules. But folks didn't realize, for example, that tonight Michael Coelho is actually teaching as part of his teaching load. He has a differentiated schedule. So when we look at, if you do a cursory look at his schedule during the day and you see he has a big block of time, well, it's because he's here for 2 hours at night teaching. So my conversation with Jerry was just around those things and understanding the schedules and trying to tighten up some of the music schedules. So we do some changes, some minor changes. Cheryl and I have been dealing with some changes in personnel. We're in the process of moving the HR functions back to central office. Risa Hassel has resigned, and her last day is this Friday. So we've been in the process of transitioning all of those functions back over to our office. That's gone fairly well. I haven't really been involved.
So explain that further. So we centralized those to town hall.
Yep.
They had a person leave, so they're choosing to send it back to us?
No, I think over the last couple of years, and I'm going to be extremely
diplomatic
here. Not even diplomatic, it's just a matter of course. During the last 2 years, Tony and I undertook to try to consolidate services. As we have with the facilities department, and that's working very well. There's stark differences between payroll and HR on the school side from the town side. And, after 2 years of trying to make it work and trying to smooth out the processes, we realized that we needed to bring it back under one roof. And so in part of those conversations, we were looking to move the existing personnel back to central office. During the process, that person decided to resign.
So what does that mean? Is that a change?
Taking another.
Well, yeah, does that mean that we're adding a person or we're down a person and we're just
replacing a person?
Yep.
So it won't actually impact the budget theoretically because it's okay.
No, we were paying for the position anyway.
Okay.
So it's not
So basically, the person was at town hall. You said move to central office, and she said see you later.
Yes.
She said, "I'm not working in a building without an elevator. I am sorry."
I'm not working with Dr.
But you recently hired a part-time person, right? So that must help.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, she's a tremendous help during this interim
That's good.
period.
Yeah.
She a candidate for full-time?
We literally just posted, but we have 5 applicants,
Good.
6 applicants, and 4 that we're going to do a pre-screen interview with.
That's great.
Good.
Nice to have that.
And we have somebody coming in as well, part-time, on an interim basis as well, just to kind of spread out the workload. Laura's going to help out, Liz is helping out, Kathy, it's kind of just everyone.
And this position is HR and payroll?
It's an HR.
Just HR, okay, sorry.
Okay. Again, I continue to meet with the principals on a weekly basis. Tracy, Cheryl, and I spent time reviewing the ESSER 2 and 3 budgets, preparing amendments for those as reflected in the proposed budget. The administrative team has started to meet remotely so that we don't run into a situation where we wipe out the entire leadership team at once. We do have one member of our team that is out this week. The DEI group met on Tuesday, and I spoke about that in my goals, so I won't reiterate it here. Yesterday morning, I had the Crest Collaborative Board of Directors meeting, and then I attended a webinar on the new testing program that the state is rolling out. Today I met with Jen Reed and Colleen Furman at lunchtime just to talk about the logistics from the town's perspective and what that means, because there's different reporting requirements and different tracing that they have to do. So we want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that. And then this afternoon I attended the middle school faculty meeting, and then after that met with the nurses to review our plan for rolling out this new protocol. That was it.
Light week.
Yeah.
Any questions for Brian? All right. Thank you very much. Subcommittees, working groups, liaison reports. Budgets met. We get a quick run through, or not a quick run through, a run through of the draft budget that Brian, Cheryl, the administrators did a lot of work on. So we had a number of questions there. I thought it was a great meeting just to kind of get a heads up on what the administrators are thinking of for the coming year. So that was certainly helpful. You guys have anything to add there? You?
And I think the things you should all know is that we're planning to add an assistant principal to support the elementary schools, split between the 2 elementary schools. We're planning on adding ELL personnel. We're planning on having an extra section of pre-K, K, and first grade at the Winthrop School next year.
And I want to be careful. I want to interrupt for a second. We currently have that extra section of at least K and 1 in the Winthrop budget.
Yep.
But I want to be careful with that, because if as we
Get the actual
time
numbers
moves forward and we get closer to the end of the year and we have better numbers, that could change depending on the gray area. But I left it in the budget for Winthrop at this point. There was actually 2 kindergarten sections requested, one at Doyon and one at Winthrop, and I reduced the budget in the Doyon for the Doyon section. Just left 1. I don't think we need 2, so I just left 1. But depending on where the numbers fall, that position may end up being in the Doyon. So
Yep, agreed. Yeah, and we'll talk about that when they present. The other things that were highlights were outplacements are now part of the central district budget instead of assigned to individual schools. So So you'll see the individual schools' budgets kind of shrink because of that, and the central budget bumps up because of that. And so that's going to be important to know when you're looking at the budgets. But those are probably the big highlights and changes. There are some little odds and ends positions. The other big one is we're pulling in ESSER funds to cover quite a lot of positions, some of which may be positions that stick around after ESSER. So we're going to have to be a little careful about assigning revolving or impermanent funds, permanent positions. And I asked Brian to look at that, and we have to be thoughtful about how we present that when we present it to the FinCom and when we get that information later on. Because we want to use ESSER, we want to use it productively, we want to use it to support students as they come back out of COVID. At the same time, some of these positions are part of that, including having a little bit smaller class sizes, having ELL professionals available, and having an assistant principal who can do a lot of evaluation and help offload those elementary principals who are overloaded a bit right now. So those are all arguably within ESSER's guidelines, but they may also be things we have to absorb into our regular budget when ESSER's gone. And so that's a concern.
So we'll hear from the principals at our next meeting, correct?
Yes,
Yep.
the actual next one or two meetings.
Next two meetings.
Is all budget.
Mhm.
It's the only agenda item.
Are we gonna get to dig into a little bit? I have definite
completely.
questions about.
Oh, yeah, you'll get the budget on Monday.
We just got the preview, and then
Yep.
we give it. The superintendent kind of have to put a stamp on it, and we all talk about kind of things we have to look at, and then the whole committee gets that next.
Particularly going into an override ask, I think it's going to be important to discuss what we've cut, what we're not, what we're doing differently. I think the town, that'll be important for taxpayers to hear. And then why funding administrative positions is
Well, I think what was very clear in that meeting, and I had those same questions you had, what
Yeah.
became very clear to me, and I think to the three of us, was that the needs have changed a lot, especially at the elementaries, Winthrop in particular, and you'll see that that particular portion of the budget does stand out as being sort of an outlier amongst the other schools. But I thought the principals did a great job of just kind of giving us that detail about how the needs have changed and why they're requesting what they're requesting.
it's not a new request, and it was,
Oh, the assistant principal?
Right.
That's been happening for 10 years.
Right.
Maybe 15.
getting.
Have we ever had an assistant principal? I'm just
At
curious.
the elementaries, never.
Okay, just wondering.
We've considered it since I started.
Well, there was a fellow last year,
Oh, right.
Sarah.
Who became the principal.
Mhm.
So they're proposing a shared principal between the two elementaries, essentially.
And their proposal is actually to use that position to do teacher assessment, which is a burden that's overwhelming and difficult for any principal, especially when there are lots of other things to do. So that educator assessment piece hasn't been done as completely as it should. So that's a big part of the job of the assistant principal.
And that assistant principal would, seems like, primarily do the assessments of the professional teachers, which would free up the administrators
To look at the new teachers.
to focus more on the new teachers and have more time to focus on families, kids, other needs.
So would compensation, I guess this is questions for later, but would compensation be reflective of not a full vice principal position, but just really specializing in doing this work?
I think they'd be a full vice
It'd be an
president
administrator position.
in 2 buildings.
Yeah, I guess I'll just.
Yeah,
yeah.
higher,
we'll
yeah,
have time to
yeah,
dig
yeah,
into it
But it is,
in 2 weeks.
It's higher than teacher salary.
No, I understand that, but if, I'm just, again, trying to be mindful of
Yep.
what we're
Yep.
asking.
Keep cuts away from kids, and
What we're asking for and what we're
when you're
funding.
hiring administrators, that's a problem.
Yes.
At some point, I don't know if now's the time to talk about this, but at some point, we need to also focus on what we will lose if our funding stops.
Yeah, that's a budget decision, but realistically,
The
first year we won't lose anything.
Administrator would say, hey, you're getting 800,000 cut out of your budget, how are you gonna do it?
you can't.
If
Well,
the override
if the override fails,
fails.
you'll have.
The
to-
override fails, we won't have to at all, it'll be a year later. It has to fail twice.
I understand.
But it's still a valid question.
I understand. That's a question that should be on the horizon, it should be on top of mind for people when considering whether to vote for the override or not, especially since we have all of, mostly, we've had 8 years of people not experiencing cuts. So we need to also spend a little time on that. It'd be nice to have that exercise.
Yeah, Kate and I talked about that earlier too, was trying to sort of put that into the override messaging and that'll be an issue for us to take up in the budget subcommittee also.
It'd be nice to also see how the administrators would do
Right.
it. A massive cut.
But remember, I mean, we're doing it now so that if we lose, we don't have to make massive cuts.
Yeah, but
we
wouldn't
have
lose
to-
twice.
we have to set, the override committee has to sell it. So wouldn't it be nice for the override committee to have some
Tangible.
data that says, geez, if we have to cut $2 million from our budget, what will that look like?
Well, we really
That would be
related to the
the
experience from
subcommittee.
2014 and what was cut then
Yeah.
and proportional to what we're
I
doing
know.
now. Yeah,
But
so
it'd be nice to
You
have
cut so
our
much more than that in the second
administrators
year, but in the
do that.
first year, you won't have to.
yeah,
I know
so
that.
we're working on it.
Yeah.
Communications?
We met, we got the newsletter together that we, thank you all for your submissions. It's in the meeting folder for tonight. It's in a Google format. We are going to be putting it into that some more form so that it can be translatable. Laura is going to help with that. I didn't hear from her today, so I'm hoping it's going okay. If people could read it over, that'd be great. If you haven't already, there's highlights on Traversal Weatherall grants, last message from Chubb as chair, some information about the school budget, including meetings we're hoping the public can attend on budget hearings. Actually, I had a question about that. Do we know how the February 2nd, February 3rd breakdown's going to be? Who's going to be what night? Because I think I'm encouraging public to come to those budget hearings
Elementary is
to
the
learn
first night.
about the budget.
We haven't set that yet, but
Okay.
can get that out.
Yeah, I'd just be curious what, I can't remember what it's been in the past. It used to be 3 nights, and now it's 2 nights.
No, that's what we present to the select board.
That's the finance committee demands
the
3
longer,
nights.
yeah.
So this is 2.
Ours, I want to say the last couple of years, ours, we've done in one
Single night.
1 night, okay.
Which has been.
Are we gonna-
Historically, it was 2 nights, the last couple of years, just one.
On the 2nd.
I'm sorry?
Historically, 2 nights, the last couple of years, one. FinCom's historically been 3 nights.
3 nights.
The last couple of years, we've kind of squeezed it down to 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an article about use of outside funds in the newsletter, highlighting sort of how the ESSER funds are used, what we've spent those on, because I think that's important for the public to know how we're spending that money. And then the last article is on School Facilities Working Group update, just outlining the NASDAQ enrollment proposal we're seeking and the just general plan, just to make sure the public knows we're moving ahead with listening sessions for the elementary school building project. And I think that's about it. So please read it over. Let me know of any edits as soon as possible.
When is that scheduled to go out?
Tomorrow. End of day.
Read fast.
That's why I put it in the folder this morning and emailed you all, but, yeah, what's your timeline, Laura?
It could go out anytime tomorrow.
Okay. So, historically, I've gotten no edits, so I'm not expecting a lot, but you just made one. Okay. Yeah, that was the bulk of our conversation on communications. Sorry, one more thing. We met Craig and I went and spoke to Joanne Fries. Bob and I went to Winthrop Fries last night. Just talked a little bit about what we do, met some new parents, talked about the override a little bit, and we do plan on attending school council meetings end of this month and in February as well. So if anyone would like to participate in a school council meeting, we're trying to get on their agendas.
Okay. Any other subcommittees met since our last meeting? Policy met?
Nope.
Operations? No. Any I'm missing? No. Liaisons?
Believe it or not, January 31st, the draft audit is ready to do. So if anyone would like to see the town draft audit, I'd be happy to forward it on. But
Are there any findings relevant to the schools?
I haven't looked yet, I just got it.
You might want to check that out.
But that's where you start, I always start in the back. Those.
Typically, the town accountant would tell me if there was.
What's that?
The town accountant would tell me if there was school findings, because we would have to respond.
STEAM team met on Tuesday, and we're just kind of continuing to get more, get ourselves more organized and looking at this massive to-do list, which was very impressive. And the design for the t-shirt, which, as you know, there's a new one every year, done by one of our very talented students. I'm very excited. We're going with black this year.
Black everything. Awesome.
So it's just a lot of fun. Great group of people. I'm excited for this.
Anyone else?
The high school advisory council met, primarily talked about budget and COVID mitigation strategies, particularly in the cafeteria, and midterms, which are ongoing.
Okay. IEF, we meet on the 31st as well, so I'll have an update next time for that. Let's see, any new business?
I heard from a high school parent today who is interested in high school council meeting, but can't find where it is, when it is. It's on the school calendar, but it doesn't say where it is or what
The
time.
high school council?
Yeah.
First Monday of every month?
It's the first Monday. It's currently remote.
Okay.
I would have them connect with John and get looped in. Although I think we talked about possibly February would be back in person. I think that's in Mr. Ames' room.
And that's different than the Student Advisory Council.
It's the same.
It's the same.
Yeah, so it's the group of, it's parents, students, and teachers.
Okay.
Are they meeting in person this year?
All right, vouchers and bills?
The last 2 we've been remote.
Good with that? All right. Consent agenda. Move the Ipswich School Committee to approve the following: a $996 check for guest custodios to be deposited into the high school student activity account, and a $1,000 donation from Ingenuity Inc. to be deposited into the high school gift account and earmarked for the robotics team.
Second.
All in favor? All right. Executive session.
All right, shall I go ask Scott to
Shut it off.
turn it off?
Yeah.
I'll do that after we vote together.
Laura, I have a question on this motion. There's no end quote on here. Is there something missing after chair so declares?
Oh, no, just Mary.
Okay, so I just read this.
And in addition to that,
I'm confused.
following the executive session, we'll be coming out of executive session for the sole purpose of adjourning. There'll be no action taken, just so that folks that are watching know that
Done.
our business is done once we're finished with the executive session. So
Okay. All right, move that the school committee meet in executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purposes: to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. So roll call. Do we need a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Hugh?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Chubb?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Pav?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
we
Okay.
are in executive session. We'll give it a few minutes till we make sure that the camera and...
But you have to read that thing
Do I need to
too.
read the next one?
Yeah, read that next part before they cut it.
It's nice seeing everyone in public again.
Kind of.
Yeah, go ahead. The school committee will now meet in executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purposes: to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. The committee will be reconvening in open session this evening for the sole purpose of adjourning.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Dr. O'Flynn, once you're done there, I think you can